Hello everyone, today I continue the story about the single mother Diệu Hân. I hope you enjoy watching the video. It has been a week, yet Han still hasn't found any trace of Long, the only friend who could prove Tana's innocence. Every day after work she takes every chance to inquire everywhere, from old colleagues, acquaintances, to connections that seemed irrelevant, but all of it leads to a dead end. The more she searches in vain, the heavier her heart grows. She begins to wonder if Long deliberately disappeared. Or worse, if some hidden force is concealing him, determined to keep the truth forever in the shadows. During those days Han grew frail. Dark circles ringed her sleepless eyes, and her heart was constantly gripped with fear. At the company, many noticed the change, but no one truly knew what was happening. Only a few close friends understood that she was carrying a crushing burden, balancing her work while desperately trying to clear the name of the man she trusted. Inside the detention cell, Tan fared no better. Each night, lying on the cold iron bed, he replayed every detail of the days before his arrest. Who had framed him? Why had everything suddenly crashed down on him like a storm? He thought of his times with Long, their conversations, the strange looks he once ignored. It all connected into a chain. But one crucial piece was missing to unveil the truth. The same question echoed in his mind. If Long cannot be found, will I have to bear the crime in his place? Even so, Tan refused to collapse. He believed Han would never abandon him, and even more, he believed that the truth would eventually come to light. Each time someone visited, he forced a smile, his eyes flickering with hope, as if to reassure them that he still had faith. But when darkness cloaked the cell, despair returned, suffocating him. Outside, Tana's family was also in turmoil. His mother, already frail, forced herself to endure each day. She bit back the pain of her persistent coughs, trying to stay strong for her son. "I believe you're innocent, Tan. There will be a way," she often whispered through tears as she prayed before the family altar. Tana's close friends also refused to stand idle. Some searched for news, others pulled strings within the industry to track down Long. Each contributed what they could, but the results remained as murky as fog. The deadlock left everyone anxious, but none could bear to give up, because they all believed Tan could not be the culprit. Han, more than anyone, understood that time was running out. If Long or new evidence wasn't found soon, the case file would close, and all the blame would fall on Tana's shoulders. Each night she tossed and turned, drenched in cold sweat, her mind consumed by a single thought. She must find Long no matter the cost before it was too late. One late afternoon, after finishing work, Han dragged her weary steps along the familiar road. With each passing day, the despair in her heart grew heavier. A week had gone by and she had run everywhere, asking countless people, reaching out to every possible contact, yet Long's whereabouts remained as elusive as smoke and shadows. She stopped by a roadside cafe, intending to rest and think of another plan. But just as she was about to order an iced tea, she accidentally overheard two men at the next table talking. "Hey, I saw someone who looked like Long at the South bus station the other day. He looked really nervous, like he was about to run away somewhere." "Really? If he's trying to escape, maybe he's gotten himself into some serious trouble." Han's heart skipped a beat. Her whole body stiffened. The name Long in that conversation struck her like a flash of light piercing through the darkness. Without thinking, she turned quickly, stepping toward them, her voice hurried. "Excuse me. The person you just mentioned, Long, what did he look like? What was he wearing?" The two men exchanged wary glances. After a moment, one of them replied, That guy was tall and thin, wearing a gray jacket and carrying an old backpack. He looked terrified. I remember he avoided eye contact like he was afraid of being recognized. He was in a hurry, seemed like he wanted to catch a bus out of town." Han's pulse raced. She memorized every detail, her hand gripping her phone tightly inside her pocket. After days of hopeless searching, her body suddenly felt alive again. This could be the first real lead in the endless darkness. Without hesitation, Han immediately called Dan, her close friend, a former police officer who had already helped her many times in the search. "Dan, I just heard that Long showed up at the South bus station. He might be trying to run away. Can you help me check the security cameras there?" Her voice trembled, but it was firm. On the other end of the line, Dan was silent for a few seconds. She could hear his heavy breathing before he finally said, "All right. If it really is Long, we have to move fast. If he disappears, Han will lose his only chance of being cleared. That night, Han lay restless on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The image of Long with his old backpack and frantic steps through the bus station haunted her. Her mind churned. Why is Long running away? What is he afraid of? Is someone forcing him into silence? Or worse, is he himself involved in framing Tan? The thought gnawed at her all night, keeping her awake. Every noise outside, the sound of passing cars, the barking of dogs, made her heart leap in fear. The next morning, just as Han arrived at her office, her phone rang. It was Dan. His voice was tense, unlike his usual self. Han, I had someone check the security footage. It's true. Someone who looks very much like Long was at the South bus station the other night. But here's the strange part. There was a black sedan following him as he left. The car kept a slow pace, always keeping its distance but never letting him out of sight. It looks like Long isn't just running away, he's being watched. Han's body turned cold, a chill running down her spine. If Long was only trying to escape, she might still be able to persuade him. But if someone was tracking him, forcing him into silence, then this was no longer just about one man, it was part of a larger conspiracy. She hung up, standing silently by the office window for a long while, staring at the bustling street below. One thought burned in her mind. I have to find Long before it's too late. If not, Tan will never have a chance to prove his innocence. As soon as she got the call from Dan, Han felt her blood surge with urgency. If Long was really being followed by a black sedan, not only was his life in danger, but the only chance to save Tan was also at risk. Dan, we have to find Long immediately. If we're too late, we might never see him again. Han insisted, her voice trembling with tension. Dan nodded, his gaze more serious than ever. I agree. But Han, you need to be prepared. This isn't simple anymore. There may be a whole conspiracy behind Long. Once we step into this, there's no turning back. Han pressed her lips together, her eyes burning with determination. I'm not afraid. Tan needs me, and only Long can save him. No matter what, I won't back down. Dan brought Han to the bus station surveillance room. The bluish glow from the screens lit their tense faces. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to see Long hurrying toward the back gate. His movements frantic, glancing over his shoulder as if terrified of being followed. Moments later, a black sedan appeared, silently trailing him. The car kept a cautious distance like a shadow. The license plate was blurry, but Dan managed to jot it down. This car, it belongs to a private transport company. But something's odd. That company has changed ownership several times recently, with paperwork so tangled it's hard to trace. Dan frowned, gripping his notes tightly. Han's heart pounded harder. She never expected the matter to be this complicated, possibly tied to an entire business. That night, they rode toward the outskirts. The road was quiet, dim streetlights reflecting on patches of old rainwater. Han sat on the back of Dan's motorbike, clutching the seat, her chest tight with anxiety. When they arrived, they saw a large parking lot, fenced off with tall corrugated metal sheets. Inside, dozens of black sedans were lined up in rows. Under the yellow light stood several burly men on guard. The cold night air mixed with the tense atmosphere sent shivers through Han. Han, stay here. I'll go check. Dan whispered, eyes fixed on the guards. No. If it's dangerous, I need to know. This is our only chance to save Tan. I can't stand aside. Han's voice shook, but her resolve was unyielding. Dan looked at her for a long moment, his eyes filled with both worry and admiration. Finally, he sighed and nodded. All right, but we have to be very careful. One mistake and we'll both be caught. They crept along the fence, slipping through the bushes, their breaths shallow, every step deliberate. Reaching a hidden corner, they held their breath and peered inside. What they saw made Han freeze in horror. Long was being escorted by two men, his hands tied, his face pale with fear, his eyes vacant with despair. He tried to say something, but was immediately silenced with a shout and a slap that knocked him off balance. In front of him stood a well-dressed, imposing man with cold eyes. He didn't say much, just crossed his arms, watching with a faint, chilling smile. Oh my God, it's Long. He's being held captive. Han whispered, trembling as she clutched Dan's arm. Dan clenched his teeth, fury flashing in his eyes. There's no doubt anymore. Behind Tana's case is an entire network. And Long is the key witness they want silenced. If we want to save Long and clear Tana's name, we'll have to face them head-on. The air around them grew heavy. A chill gripped Han's heart like an invisible hand squeezing tight. But then in her eyes, fear gave way to a fierce determination. No matter what, I must save Long. Only then can Tan be freed from this injustice. The shrill ring of a phone tore through the stillness of the night. The two guards snapped their heads around, flashing their torches toward the sudden sound. Heavy footsteps, curses of annoyance. The men trudged toward the hidden phone. In that fleeting moment, Dan gripped Han's hand tightly and whispered, "Go! Now!" Like shadows, the two darted swiftly, slipping through the darkness, weaving between the parked cars until they reached the spot where Long was tied up. Under the sickly yellow light, Long's face appeared, panic-stricken, his bloodshot eyes worn from exhaustion and fear. "Long! It's me, Han. We've come to save you." Han's voice trembled as her hands worked to untie the rope. Long flinched, his eyes wide with both shock and despair. "No, you have to leave. They're dangerous. You don't understand. They won't let anyone live." "Quiet. No time for that." Dan cut in sharply, his strong hands yanking the knot loose. Within seconds, the ropes fell away. Long clutched his wrists, a faint glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. But just then, "Who's there?" A barked command thundered from behind. A beam of light slashed across the darkness, landing squarely on the three of them. Han froze, her heart stopping. Dan instantly stepped forward, shielding them, and shouted, "Hun! Take Long and run!" Footsteps pounded. Angry voices erupted. "Catch them! Don't let them escape!" 5 men rushed in from all sides, torches swinging wildly. In the chaos, Han gripped Long's hand and dragged him toward the lowest stretch of the fence she had spotted earlier. Dan fought as he fell back, his powerful frame flooring a burly guard with a crushing blow. But more men closed in. The stench of dust, rust, sweat, and fear pressed down on Han, suffocating her. Long gasped for breath, glancing back. "No! Dan is still behind us. Go! He'll catch up." Han screamed, tears streaming, though her legs carried her forward relentlessly. In moments they clambered over the fence, clothes torn, skin scraped raw. Behind them, shouts grew louder. "Hurry! They're getting out!" Just as Han and Long tumbled outside the barrier, the piercing wail of police sirens split the night. Red and blue lights strobed across the dark street, flooding the scene in flashing color. From all directions, special police vehicles and uniformed officers poured in like a tidal wave. Shouts rang out, gunshots cracked into the sky. "Police! Everyone freeze! Drop your weapons!" The guards halted, their faces drained of blood. A few tried to flee back inside, only to be slammed down, their wrists locked in cold steel cuffs. Han collapsed just outside the fence, clutching Long tightly, torn between terror and relief. She looked up to see Dan being pulled out by an officer, his body battered and filthy but his eyes burning bright. "Dan, are you all right?" Han's voice shook. Dan managed a smile, nodding, and signaled, "I'm fine. It's over, at least for tonight." Long slumped to the ground, panting, his whole body trembling. His tear-filled eyes looked at them both, his voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have risked your lives. But thank you. I'll testify to everything. Tan is innocent, it was all their setup. They tried to silence me, but now they can't." Han broke down in tears, throwing her arms around Long's shoulders, her heart bursting after endless days of despair. Dan clenched his fists, his gaze fixed on the brightly lit lot where men were still being subdued. This is only the beginning. Behind Long is a whole network. And they won't give up easily. In the strobing glow of the police lights, a new shadow of fear crossed Han's face. The joy of finding Long alive had barely settled before a darker dread took its place. Would the truth truly set Tan free, or would it only open the door to an even greater battle? The day Tan was released, the sky seemed brighter, cleansed by the night's rain. Morning sunlight filtered gently through the leaves, and the breeze carried the earthy scent of damp soil, fresh and pure. But to Han, all of this was nothing more than a backdrop for the overwhelming happiness overflowing in her heart. She hadn't slept a wink the night before. In her small room, Han carefully folded each piece of clothing, picking out a clean, neat outfit to bring for Tan. His old favorite shoes, the birthday gift she once gave him, were polished until they shone. Every small act carried the weight of love and anticipation. When the detention door opened, Tan stepped out, frail and worn. His face was gaunt, his hair disheveled, his skin darkened by confinement. Yet his eyes, once filled with despair, now glowed with hope, a spark of life renewed. In that instant, Han could no longer hold back. Tears poured down her cheeks as her legs carried her swiftly forward. She threw her arms around him. "Tan, at last you're free." Han's voice broke, trembling. "I knew it. I knew you would never abandon me. Thanks to you, thanks to everyone," Tan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. In that embrace, all the injustice, all the suffering of the past days seemed to dissolve. What remained was love, trust, and hope. Outside, Tana's mother was helped forward by friends. The moment she saw her son, she burst into tears, stumbling toward him, her frail arms clinging to him desperately. "My son, I knew you were innocent. Heaven has eyes, justice has returned to you." Her voice trembled with sobs. Tan knelt before her, grasping her thin hands tightly. "I'm sorry for all the pain I caused you. I promise I'll never let you cry again." Close friends rushed forward too, the same ones who had stood by Han, chasing every lead, exhausting themselves but never giving up. Today, all of it was rewarded. Their handshakes, their embraces carried more meaning than words ever could. That evening, the small home that had long been shrouded in gloom was filled with laughter. A simple family meal, vegetable soup, braised fish, and stir-fried pork, overflowed with joy. Smiles and tears mingled freely. Sitting beside Han, Tana's eyes followed her every gesture with gratitude and tenderness. "Han, without you, I would have lost everything. You not only saved me, but gave me the will to go on." Han smiled softly, brushing away her tears. "I only did what my heart told me. What matters most is that you've come back." At the head of the table, Tana's mother sat with reddened eyes but peace in her heart. She looked at her son and at Han, a gentle smile curving her lips, as if entrusting her hopes to them, believing that the storms had passed, and only peace and a brighter future remained. That little home needed no lavish feast or blaring music. Each laugh, each tear that fell was proof of one truth. Love and faith are enough to banish the darkest shadows. Yet after being cleared, Tana's return to normal life was not as easy as he had imagined. His time in detention left invisible scars. Night after night, he would wake in terror, drenched in sweat, haunted by the sound of clinking handcuffs, the damp cell walls, the cold eyes of those who once called him friend, and the cruel whispers of gossip. Though declared innocent, Tan still faced skeptical glances. No one openly accused him anymore, but the way some kept their distance or whispered as he passed was enough to wound him. Work became harder, partners withdrew, projects were suspended. It was a social scar he was forced to carry. Tan knew he had to rebuild trust from zero. Through it all, Han was his only light. She refused to let him sink into despair or shame. Every morning, she prepared a simple but warm breakfast, smiling encouragingly. "Don't worry. The truth is on your side. One day, people will see your true worth." Whenever he faltered, ready to give up, Han held his hand firmly, her eyes unwavering. "I walked through the storm with you before. There's no reason I won't walk this new path with you now." Her words strengthened him. He realized she wasn't just someone who loved him. She was someone willing to sacrifice, to fight for the faith she had in him. With Dan's help, and a few trusted friends, Tan slowly rebuilt his career. Instead of returning to old paths, he chose to start fresh, founding a small company. The contracts were few at first, but every step was honest, every deal transparent. "Having been betrayed once, I have to live with even more integrity now. I don't want to depend on anyone but myself," Tan said one breezy afternoon as they sat together on the porch. Han looked at him, her eyes shining with pride and faith. "I believe in you. We'll start over together with our own hands." Laughter gradually replaced tears in the little home. Tana's mother regained her health, tending to the flowers in the yard. Each time she saw Tan and Han holding hands, she smiled in quiet contentment. One evening, when things had finally settled, Tan took Han to the park where they once had their modest dates. Under the dim streetlights, the night wind gently lifted her hair. Stopping under an old tree, Tan took her hand, his calloused palm still marked with hardship. Han, after everything, I realize the most important thing isn't work or reputation. The most precious thing is you. The one who never abandoned me at my darkest. Will you walk with me through the rest of this life? Tears welled in Han's eyes, but her smile radiated joy. I've been waiting for those words for so long. They embraced tightly in the quiet night. After the storm, they had found peace in each other's arms. The sky above seemed clearer, the universe itself listening, bearing witness to their vow. The storms had passed, leaving behind a love tested by fire, now stronger, deeper and more unshakable than ever.
Hello mọi người, rất vui được gặp lại mọi người trong video của mình. Chúc mọi người một ngày mới vui vẻ và hạnh phúc. Hy vọng rằng những câu chuyện về những người mẹ đơn thân của mình sẽ mang đến nhiều ý nghĩa và niềm vui cho mọi người trong cuộc sống. Nếu mọi người thấy những video của mình hay và hấp dẫn thì nhớ để lại cho mình một nhận xét ở dưới phần bình luận để mình có động lực làm những video tiếp theo. Và nhớ like, share, bật chuông thông báo để nhận thông báo khi mình đăng video mới nhất để không bỏ lỡ một video nào. Mọi người nhớ ủng hộ kênh cho mình nha, để mình có động lực làm những câu chuyện hay hấp dẫn hơn cho mọi người theo dõi. Và đặc biệt nếu thấy kênh của mình hay thì nhớ chia sẻ giúp mình nha. Một lần nữa cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video của mình. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau nha.